Hey, Sean or somebody on the team, I'm testing out just to make sure my AirPods are on. Can someone say something? I want to make sure I can hear you.
Councilmember, this is Sean. Can you hear me?
Thank you. Yep, thank you.
We are working on getting ourselves going here for wait just a moment, Councilmember. We're still awaiting Mr. Stuart Anderson, and I'm going to give him just a couple of minutes since we're actually right on time at the moment to get him going.
Hey, Sean or somebody on the team, I'm testing out just to make sure.
All right, Councilmember. We've now been joined by the nominees, Ms. Clymer and Mr. Baldwin, as well as Commissioner Adolfo. My recommendation is that we go ahead and get started, and then we'll work on getting Mr. Anderson logged in while we get going. So I'm going to go ahead and start the recording if you're ready, Councilmember.
I'm ready. Thank you.
You can begin when you're ready.
Good afternoon, everyone. I'm Robert White, Council Member at Large and Chair of the Committee on Government Operations and Facilities. Today is Thursday, June 30th, 2022, and we're meeting remotely via the Zoom teleconference platform. The time is now 12:04 p.m., and I'm calling to order this public roundtable of the committee. Today, we will be reviewing 4 proposed resolutions: PR 24-686, the Commission on Human Rights, Charlotte Clymer Confirmation Resolution of 2022, PR 24-687, the Commission on Human Rights, Eleanor Collison Confirmation Resolution of 2022, PR 24-688, the Commission on Human Rights, Robert Baldwin III Confirmation Resolution of 2022, and PR 24-689, the Commission on Human Rights, Stuart Anderson Confirmation Resolution of 2022. These resolutions would confirm the appointment of 3 new nominees to the Commission on Human Rights, as well as the reappointment of current Commissioner Eleanor Collison. The Commission is a formal adjudicative body made up of 15 volunteer commissioners who help to enforce the Human Rights Act of 1977, or HRA. Under the HRA, when a person believes they have faced discrimination in certain settings, they may file a lawsuit or bring a complaint before the Office of Human Rights for free. If after thorough investigation, the director of OHR determines that there is probable cause to believe a violation took place, the case is sent before an administrative law judge representing the Commission on Human Rights. The administrative law judge recommends findings and possible remedies, but it is ultimately up to a panel of commissioners to serve as a kind of jury of experts to approve or modify the administrative law judge's proposed decision. Commissioners serve for 3-year terms. By law, the mayor is required to select individuals with a demonstrated background or interest in anti-discrimination law. PR 24-686 would appoint Charlotte Clymer to the commission. Ms. Clymer is an independent communications consultant with experience advocating on behalf of Catholics for Choice and the Human Rights Campaign. An Army veteran and active commentator on LGBTQ rights, Ms. Clymer has taken a keen interest in equal rights in DC. PR 24-688 would appoint Robert Baldwin III as another new commissioner. Mr. Baldwin is both producer of the NPR news program All Things Considered and a practicing attorney. According to his materials, employment discrimination cases are a significant part of his practice. PR 24-689 would appoint Stuart Anderson to the commission for the first time. Mr. Anderson has a long history of assisting his fellow formerly incarcerated Washingtonians with the difficult work of reintegrating into our communities. Currently, he leads the Family and Friends of Incarcerated People and serves on the Anacostia Coordinating Council. Ms. Clymer, Mr. Baldwin, and Mr. Anderson, I want to thank you all for joining us today. We also have PR 24-687 on the agenda for today's roundtable. That resolution would confirm the reappointment of Eleanor Collinson, who has already served as a commissioner since 2017. Although a scheduling conflict prevented Ms. Collinson from joining us today, the committee is still accepting testimony on her reappointment from anyone who wishes to speak today or to email the committee by tomorrow. The mayor transmitted these nominations to the council in April, and under our laws, they will be deemed disapproved unless the council takes actions on them by mid-September. Between the budget that we just finalized and the council's upcoming recess, during which we're not allowed to hold certain proceedings, we had a pretty narrow window in which to hold today's roundtable. So I want to thank everyone who was able to join us. I believe we have one public witness. So let me welcome Commissioner Adolfo as he gets queued up. Let me lay out the ground rules for our public witnesses. Everyone should have received a copy of the witness list yesterday. I'll call that witness, just call that witness. As Commissioner Adolfo knows, you'll drop out of the hearing momentarily, come back in as a panelist, at which point you can unmute yourself. So let me give a moment for the commissioner. There we are. Commissioner Adolfo, very good to see you today. Thanks for joining us. And you can begin your testimony when you're ready.
Yes, sir. Thank you for having me. I'm glad to be here and stand with my brother, Stuart Anderson, who I encourage you to accept this nomination. Stuart is a really good brother who's done a lot of good work in our community. And I'm sure that the expertise that he has from working with friends and families of incarcerated people, as well as the Anacostia Coordinating Council, as well as serving on the DC State Democratic Party, gives him the experience that's necessary to be able to be fair, just, and make sure that all of our rights are recognized and adhered to. As well as someone that I've had the pleasure of working with just recently, Robert Baldwin III. But I've also worked with him in the past in his work with the Washington Bar Association's Young Lawyers Division. And he also is someone that I would definitely recommend to being on this commission. Having a good balance of some young people as well as some older folks as Stuart Anderson, I think gives us an opportunity to have some different perspectives on things, but still a fair and just opportunity for all residents that will come before the commission. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Just want to confirm for the record, Stuart Anderson is one of the older folks. So one quick question about Mr. Anderson, who I've known for years and respect a great deal. His background, I think, is more working with incarcerated and formerly incarcerated people than many of the classes of people who are protected under the Human Rights Act. Do you have thoughts about his ability to fill this role?
Once again, I think Stuart is an excellent choice. Everybody, that is in, this particular city has interactions with people from all over the world, people from a variety of different backgrounds. And, there are people from a variety of different backgrounds that have been incarcerated. And so I think that having that unique perspective is an asset, to this commission. And I don't think it would prohibit him from doing anything that is not in the best interest of the residents of the District of Columbia.
I appreciate that. Well, Commissioner, I want to thank you for joining us. I'm eager to hear from our nominees. They appear on paper to be great nominees. So we'll ask them a few questions, kick the tires, and hopefully move them along. So thank you so much for being part of this hearing.
Thank you for the opportunity.
I now want to recognize our nominees, and so I will let them get queued up here for their testimonies.
Councilmember, nice to see you.
Very good to see you, Mr. Baldwin, Ms. Clymer, Mr. Anderson. Welcome. Glad to have you all here with us today. Because you all are nominees, it is the practice of this committee to put our government witnesses under oath. So I would ask that you each raise your right hand. Do you swear or affirm under penalty of perjury that the testimony you are about to provide to the Committee on Government Operations and Facilities is the truth, the whole truth, and nothing but the truth?
Do so from.
Thank you very much. We will start with our first nominee, Charlotte Clymer. You can begin when you're ready.
Yes, sir. Good afternoon, Chairperson White and distinguished council members. My name is Charlotte Clymer. My pronouns are she, her, and I am honored to appear before you today in consideration of serving at the pleasure of Mayor Muriel Bowser as one of her nominees to the DC Commission on Human Rights. I'm a proud resident of Ward 7 of the District of Columbia. I have lived in the district for nearly 15 years, the past 9 at the same address, at which I have been well represented for most of that time by Councilmember Charles Allen. I am honored and delighted that my neighborhood recently joined the Ward 7 family, which I believe reflects some of the brightest hopes and dreams of our district under the representation of Councilmember Vincent Gray. My first address here was on Fort Leslie J. McNair as a 19-year-old Army private assigned to the 3rd U.S. Infantry Regiment, the Old Guard. It was my first time living away from family in a large metropolitan area, and I could not have been more fortunate in receiving my orders. Although I will always be a Texas woman, it is here in the District of Columbia that I have learned about what it truly means to serve, build a chosen family, and found myself, my authentic being, only by the grace of the advocates and public servants who have made DC one of the safest places in the world for transgender and non-binary people. The district welcomed me with open arms. The district nurtured me through young adulthood. And when it mattered most, the district protected me as one of its own. I want to pay it forward and give back to the district. I graduated with my bachelor's from Georgetown University in 2016, much later than my peers, and as a first-generation college student. I'm quite proud of that, and I could have not done that without the supportive environment that has been built in the district for military veterans. I served as a press secretary at the Human Rights Campaign, where I led the organization's rapid response communications during the Trump years, and had the benefit of a crash course in the importance of coalition building and why allyship is multifaceted and essential to proactive citizenship. Most recently, I was a political fellow at the Georgetown Institute of Politics and Public Service, where I had the honor of mentoring students who will change our world for the better. Prior to that, I was director of communications and strategy at Catholics for Choice, working at the critical intersection of faith and human rights. Currently, I pay my bills with a newsletter I write called Charlotte's Web Thoughts, through which I advocate for human rights, particularly for LGBTQ people, with additional commentary on politics, culture, and faith. I am a writer, but I would not call this my primary focus of labor. The bulk of my time is spent being an advocate, doing unpaid work wherever I am needed. This often means fundraising and awareness. I serve on the boards of several organizations dedicated to advancing social justice in various ways. The Center for Law and Military Policy, LPAC, the nation's largest organization dedicated to electing queer women, and Running Start, a DC-based organization that trains young women and non-binary people on political and civic engagement. And often, my advocacy means short-term projects such as recently raising $45,000 for the Yellowhammer Fund, which advocates for marginalized communities in the South who need affordable access to abortion care, or Nova Community College, where we are set to announce a large trans-targeted endowment honoring the late Monica Roberts and her work advocating for Black trans women, or a satirical GoFundMe project, which was meant to highlight the absurd racism of anti-migrant and anti-refugee policies, which raised over $160,000 for ACES, a Texas-based organization that provides legal aid for migrant families. These are the efforts that take up most of my time. And I do them because there were people who fought for me long before I came into being. I'm here today to advocate for people I don't know, because I am only here today due to the generous and courage of people who will never know me, but nonetheless fought for my human rights. In 2018, I experienced rather vile discrimination at a restaurant in the District of Columbia when I was harassed for using the restroom. But because I live in the District of Columbia, I was entitled to legal protections under implementation of the Office of Human Rights that were won through the decades of leadership of trans women of color. Because I live in the District of Columbia, I have a mayor in the Honorable Muriel Bowser, who made it clear that such discrimination is unacceptable, and an attorney general in the Honorable Carl Racine, who made sure to send a signal to every business and organization that transphobia would not be tolerated within our fair district. I've served on the Mayor's Commission for Persons with Disabilities since 2017, and I've been honored to work alongside my fellow commissioners in ensuring meaningful representation of disabled Washingtonians in rooms where decisions are made. My interest in the DC Commission on Human Rights was catalyzed specifically because of its focus on thoughtful adjudication in place of fervent advocacy. These are not mutually exclusive, of course. Both are certainly necessary, but given my background and experience, serving with colleagues to determine the best course of action in difficult situations pertaining to human rights is where I feel I am currently best directed at this phase of my life. I feel I can give so much more to the cause of human rights through the work of the Commission than any other public service role in the district. It is not lost on me that I would be the only openly transgender person to serve on the Commission should the Council find it appropriate to confirm me. And yes, while I do believe that representation is important, my heart is geared toward a broader purpose: the need to build bridges between different perspectives and center nuance and empathy where division is most destructive. I am distrustful of binary narratives. I believe there is good in all of us, and it is essential to amplify that goodness to hold accountable our less humane tendencies. About 6 months after that instance of discrimination at that restaurant in 2018, I had dinner with the owner, and in him, I found a buoyant spirit, someone who was trying to do his best in a changing world and was committed to growth. He worked in good faith to ensure the dignity and safety of trans and non-binary customers in his restaurant and the health of his business need not contradict each other. In addition to the Commission's role in adjudicating private sector claims of discrimination, I am keenly aware of the Commission's role in adjudicating the appeals process for those deemed ineligible for employment under the Protection of Children Act. I am a survivor of childhood sexual abuse, and it took many years of therapy and restoration to understand the interlocking trauma that makes this role of the Commission so essential. I am here for consideration specifically because of the need for righteous anger and proactive empathy when it comes to protecting the most vulnerable in our society, and how nuance figures so strongly within that framework of justice. Yes, I am a trans woman and a survivor and a veteran and an advocate, but above all, I'm here as a Washingtonian who believes that the district is only made stronger by the considered balance of grace and accountability. I thank Mayor Bowser for nominating me and the council for their consideration. Thank you, sir.
Thank you very much. Robert Baldwin III, welcome. You can begin your statement.
Thank you. Thank you, sir. Good afternoon, Chairperson White and members of the Committee on Government Operations and Facilities. I would like to first thank Mayor Bowser for the nomination and thank you, Chairperson White, for holding this hearing today. My name is Robert Baldwin III, and I'm pleased to sit before you as the nominee for the district's Commission on Human Rights. As a labor and civil rights attorney, I am excited to use my skills to help workers in the district who have suffered from discrimination. I came to Washington, D.C. 10 years ago as a law student at UDC David A. Clark School of Law. I chose this school because of its reputation as one of the premier public interest law schools in the nation. My career in labor began as a legal intern, then postgraduate law clerk for the American Federation of Government Employees, Local 12. That is the federal union located inside of the United States Department of Labor. There, I learned to advocate for employees at the Labor Department and at the Bureau of Labor Statistics. And although I started as an intern going into my third year of law school, I quickly fell in love with the work. I knew that this is where I wanted to dedicate my career. After graduating from UDC, I went on to study international human rights at the University of Maryland School of Law. There, I focused on social movements and the employment rights of college athletes. My passion for equal protection in the workplace led me to my own law practice, where I have represented clients in both public and private sectors before administrative bodies and in litigation. As a community leader, I have most recently served as chair to the Washington Bar Association's Young Lawyers Division. My last day as chair was actually yesterday. I have also served in several capacities for the National Bar Association's Young Lawyers Division and the American Bar Association's Labor and Employment Law section. My work has received several awards, including 2 Young Lawyer of the Year recognitions from the Washington Bar Association's Young Lawyers Division, and a National Black Lawyers 40 Under 40. But recognition pales in comparison to serving the public interest in coming to determinations regarding allegations of discrimination and other forms of exploitative treatment. This is why I am seeking confirmation to the Commission on Human Rights. The commission was created in part to adjudicate private sector discrimination complaints brought under the DC Human Rights Act. My career has been dedicated to gaining expertise in labor and in human rights laws, and my experience as an advocate, if confirmed, will allow me to contribute to the commission's work immediately. My experience in these pursuits is manifold. As an attorney, I have represented clients in employment discrimination matters for several years. And as a journalist, I have reported on institutional failures that have resulted in discrimination. For the past decade, I have in some capacity represented people in discriminatory labor disputes or pursued legal education in discriminatory labor disputes. Now I seek appointment to the commission that oversees discriminatory labor disputes, as well as other similar matters. These actions demonstrate my interest in and my commitment to the advancement of human rights. If confirmed, I will be diligent in reviewing documents, being prepared for hearings, and helping to move the docket expeditiously. As a labor attorney, I have used some of the same tools that the commission enforces, such as the Human Rights Act and the DC Family Medical Leave Act. However, I understand that the commission's role is to be an impartial adjudicator. My perspective can be trusted as fair because although I have worked as a plaintiff side labor attorney, I pride myself on viewing the facts of a case from a neutral vantage point. That is the only way to achieve a just result. My career in journalism demonstrates my ability to consider all sides of an issue, as quality journalism must not have its own agenda. Journalism has also taught me skills in analyzing evidence. I am certain that my credibility will easily transfer to a position with the commission. As a reporter and a producer, I have experience with understanding all sides to see which questions are not being asked, much like how a thorough adjudicator must approach a matter. My career has been committed to protecting human rights. While my experience shows in 2 different professions, the commitment is the same. I discover facts in pursuit of the truth, and where appropriate, hold offending parties accountable. I'm committed to defending human rights, and I look forward to continuing this effort with the commission. I believe that the district laws have a necessary goal of protecting rights. The commission has done well in this regard. However, it can only do as well as what the docket allows. Every public body can continue to improve. And I look forward to sitting with my future colleagues to explore new and innovative ways to keep cases moving through the process expeditiously. I would also like to see the commission play a role in the district's efforts to encourage private companies to regularly promote internal policies prohibiting discrimination and conduct annual trainings on this topic. The best way to mitigate an overwhelming number of cases coming before the office and the commission is to proactively prevent human rights violations from happening through good policy and education. I advance these ideas humbly and look forward to learning more about the commission's role and work. But most of all, I bring the experience necessary to fairly and expertly adjudicate these cases and a commitment to timely service. So again, Councilmember White, I would like to thank you for giving me the opportunity to come before you and the committee. And I am open to answering any questions that you may have. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Last, certainly not least, Stuart Anderson. You can begin your testimony when you're ready.
Councilmember, it looks like we lost Stuart Anderson at the moment he attempted to unmute. Give me a moment. Let's see.
Okay, he looked like he froze for a second, so I suspect he'll be back with us momentarily.
Councilmember Mr. Anderson has rejoined us. If he just wants to unmute, he's ready.
Thank you, Mr. Anderson. You can turn on your camera. There we are.
Yeah, some kind of surge or something. I don't know what happened. I was like, oh man, I ain't even gonna tell you. We'll talk later.
glad they couldn't keep you away. You can begin your testimony when you're ready. Welcome.
1 second. Let me...
Sure.
So I want to say that I lost my transgender grandchild. And even before then, for a long time, Councilmember White, I've been involved in a lot of activity. A lot of people don't know the work that I do because I don't go around bragging, no broadcast. I don't have time to hold the camera and do the work. But good afternoon, Councilmember White and the members of this committee on government operations and facilities. First, allow me to thank Muriel Bowser and her staff for interviewing me and nominating me for this appointment to the DC Commission on Human Rights. I'm honored, energized, excited, and I'm just overly pleased at the nomination. And I trust that after this afternoon, you will clearly see why I should be added to this commission. My name is Stuart Winston Anderson. I'm the eldest son of a single parent who struggled to raise 5 children in our lovely city. Yes, I'm a Washingtonian. I currently live east of the river in the Anacostia neighborhood. I've lived there for over 5 years. Prior to that, I lived on U Street behind the PNC Bank, right off of MLK. Prior to that, I lived on 15th and U Street. So I've spent the last 10 years in Ward 8 in this great city, trying to help make sure that most of the people living around me get what they deserve in terms of civil rights and equity in this city. I have the distinct pleasure of having been a graduate of DC public school system. I'm honored for having been the graduate of University of the District of Columbia, for which I hold several degrees. One of those degrees happens to be a Bachelor's of Arts, which is my largest degree in urban study. That's city planning and management. For the last few years, I've been the Director for Community Engagement for the Anacostia Coordinating Council, ACC. I know that most of you are aware, members of the council, the work of ACC, so I won't go into detailing that work, but some of that work is focused on the rights of those who are members of the LGBTQ community. I also serve as the Ward 8 committee man on the DC Democratic State Committee. Additionally, as has been mentioned, I am the founding executive director for Family and Friends of Incarcerated People. I take pleasure in that is what brought me to the political platform. As a returning citizen, I not only look out for the rights of returning citizens, I work with several groups, starting with Empower DC, where I was doing work around housing and just fair equity. You know, there was an issue over in Ivy City that I led for them, where we were trying to push back on putting them buses over there. It's a human rights issue to subject people to that type of carbon monoxide. So I did do that work. But for the returning citizens population, I'm concerned about fair employment practices in general, and specifically in our city, because so many formerly incarcerated persons come home and face the daunting task of trying to find and maintain gainful employment without having to look back on their wayward past. When I was 4 years old, Title VII of the Civil Rights Act was signed, and 4 years later, Title VIII was penned. I was too young to really focus on it or understand it, or even think about equal employment opportunity or fair housing. Yet today, these acts are all important to me. It was partly because of the Fair Housing Act that my underemployed mother was able to keep a roof over my siblings and my heads. Some of the work that I have been involved in here in Washington, D.C. has been helping tenants to form tenant associations and civic associations so that they themselves might be in a better position to advocate for themselves and bring their claims before a body such as the Commission of Human Rights. So to be able to access, fair housing and housing assistance programs, it's not easy for the average person who hasn't had some type of aid and assistance. So that's the type of work that I've also done. These are reasons why I am interested in being a part of the Commission on Human Rights. I seek to volunteer some of my time to the Commission on Human Rights to continue the work of eradicating discriminations, as I just was talking about in this housing stuff, but also some other stuff as it relates to race and class in this city, increasing equity and equitable opportunities for all, and to help protect rights of everyone who live and come work and play in our city. I'm passionate about it because I know the history of this country, Robert. And I apologize if it's out of order for calling you by your first name, but we are friends. And the many injustices that have occurred across this country. And to look at what has recently happened on a congressional level, we got to be thinking about how this rollout on the attack on the rights of women to have abortions is being played out. I'm aware of these things, and I believe that my personal background will serve to be a value to the commission because of my knowledge, and I will be the first returning citizen to serve to the best of my knowledge. I'll not only be, I don't want to be too boastful and to say that I am the very best for the position, yet I will say this, my unique past, my perspective will give a distinct balance to the commission. I would rely upon, the wisdom that I've learned from my many classes, my legal classes. I got a legal assistance degree. I'm no slum. And I bring all that knowledge to the table. I also have this social background, on the ground work in our communities across the city, not just in Ward 8. I've had both of my professional and my personal backgrounds to help guide the commission forward by sharing my community-based observations with the other members of the commission. Now, I want to point some stuff out. My first approach will be to study, to learn, to listen to the established goals and objectives of the current members, and then evaluate and offer some suggestions on how we could move forward together. As mentioned above, my approach will be to assess where the commission is and then develop a plan and a vision thereafter. There's always this mystifying, impelling feeling or need of individuals, activists like myself, to come in and just want to jump in and just change some stuff and bring sweeping changes and all of that. That's not my approach. It's never been my approach. I am overly aggressive, but I want to be able to see where we are, where we've been, what the vision is for us moving forward, and then create some systemic change. And that takes time, and I understand that. If confirmed, my mission would be to gain as much knowledge, as I've said, from the inside on how the commission currently works, and then decide on initiatives that I will put my attention to. I understand that the Office of Human Rights provides a legal process for those who believe that they have been discriminated against, and that the commission adjudicates claims of discrimination also in the private sector. I understand that clearly. I plan to hear every matter brought before the commission, if I am confirmed, in a neutral and thorough manner. If anything can be said about Stuart Anderson and the work that he has given himself to over the course of the time that he's been back into this society, this community, this city, is that I'm thorough. I didn't have specific experiences with the Commission on Human Rights, so I have little to say concerning anything that has not worked well. But what I can say, that the Office on Human Rights and the Commissioner's efforts at advocating for practice of good human relations and mutual understanding among the various racial, ethnic, religious groups here in the District of Columbia, based upon what I've seen and what I've heard and what I've read, have been working well. And so I like to join in helping that and move that forward. In helping to continue the momentum in this regard, I have three things to point out, and I'm coming to my close. The first thing is that we should promote as much open discussion about the human rights complexities and challenges facing its city, right? Because the district is facing a lot of challenges right now, you know, especially some stuff around what's going on with the police department. I had some interesting conversations about them recently. The second thing is that with that in mind, and keeping stakeholders to the table, we should include content from those stakeholders, which would help launch a more in-depth, because when we bring more people to the table on the issue, we can get deeper involved in it and dig deeper about how to mitigate recurrences that take place. And finally, by having such open discussions about human rights, complexities, and challenges facing us all, we can together, we'll be able to continue to put together some simple language, some plain language, so that everybody could interpret it and understand it for themselves within future District of Columbia Human Rights Acts that we put out through the council. And so, and that would be protecting all of our DC residents. And so in closing, I want to say thank you again. I know that I have the skill set to fairly adjudicate complaints of discrimination, wherever they come from. And I will do so in the best manner that any other commissioner could do. I want to thank this committee, Chairman White, and of course, again, for hearing my testimony, the mayor's office and her team. Thank you very much. I appreciate the opportunity to deliver my testimony.
Thank you very much, Mr. Anderson. Thank you to all three nominees. I'm excited about these nominations. I think this is really going to be an excellent addition to the commission. And because of the thoroughness of the information that you all sent ahead of time, questions that we sent ahead of time, and your testimonies, I don't have a ton of questions and don't want to belabor things unnecessarily, but I do want to run through a few things. And so the first few questions will be from everyone, and we'll go in the order that folks testified. Just important to have for the record, can each of you confirm that you are a resident of the District of Columbia and that it is your intent at this time to remain a resident of the District of Columbia throughout your term as a commissioner?
I can confirm both prongs of that question. Councilman.
Yes, Mr. Chair. I'm sorry, Mr. Baldwin.
Oh, no, I'm finished.
Yes, Mr. Chair, I can confirm both of those things.
Chairman, I just won re-election. I ain't walking away until I lose. I will be right here in the city. You can always come by and knock on my door.
I like it. I'll take you up on that. Well, this is important. We have a lot of commissions in the city, various degrees of participation on those commissions, which I don't love. Some folks are excited to get appointed and then not excited about doing the work. This commission is particularly important for reasons that all of you understand. And so every time we have an appointment to a commission, I ask this question, but I know that it is particularly important here. Can each of you commit to meeting the time commitments of serving on the Commission on Human Rights? Ms. Clymer.
Yes, Mr. Chair, I can.
Thank you. Mr. Baldwin.
Yes, Mr. Chair, I can.
Mr. Anderson.
Yes, sir.
Thank you. And this is a bit redundant from some of your testimonies, but I just want to make sure that there's an opportunity to discuss this. Could each of you, I guess I'd like to know what your top priorities would be for your work on the commission should you be appointed. Now I'll start with you, Ms. Clymer.
Yes, Mr. Chair, thank you so much for the question. I wanted to really quickly apologize to Mr. Baldwin for my video off during his testimony. I wasn't sure what the appropriate thing to do there was. I just turned it off, but my apologies to Mr. Baldwin for that. Sir, I do have so many priorities within the human rights framework, women's rights, LGBTQ rights, racial equality, disabled rights, et cetera. But, my main priority in being on this commission is to engage in good faith with my fellow commissioners and to consider all the facts at hand. That is my primary duty I don't think that anyone living in the district can have faith in this commission if it is not approaching every single case with nuance and empathy and fairness. So that would be my primary responsibility, and everything else is secondary.
I appreciate that. Mr. Baldwin.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. And Ms. Clymer, I appreciate it. I also had to disable my camera dealing with sinus issues, so much appreciated. But yeah, the primary objective here is to make sure that we are adjudicating these cases fairly, both fairly and expeditiously. So I guess those would be the two primary objectives. But number one is to make sure that I am using my skill set, using my unique experience, because I do have a combination of things that are coalescing to help me in this field, to help workers who have been discriminated against. Like it is, I've said a few times during my testimony that I do have a background as a plaintiff side labor attorney. So I do have a position here, but I value fairness. So if it is, fit that if we see from the facts that discrimination has taken place, then we would need to correct that. And we would need to properly state remedies to make the plaintiff whole in the case, and make sure that it does not happen again. I think that is always our ultimate goal here. And then second to that is making sure that we are moving with these cases at a rate where we are valuing everyone's time. I think when you do have a backlog of cases, it hampers the system. You do have both plaintiffs and defendants in a matter cannot move on with their lives and move on with their businesses because they're caught up in months and years long of litigation. So we want to make sure that we're putting our best foot forward and adjudicating fairly and speed, and with speed as well, not to compromise the fairness, of course.
I appreciate that. Mr. Anderson.
So, as I said, my approach to the commission is to come in and get a clear view of where the commission is. There are 21 protected tracks, 21 of them. And so I want to be able to fill the gap, so to say. I want to be able to come in and work on some of the less desirable stuff, because I think that would be more beneficial to the commission than for me to pick anything else. In my testimony, I specifically talked about employment practices and housing employment practices for some historical reasons, but also because the largest population that I actually represent outside of Ward 8 is a returning citizen population, and that's a huge problem for them. And housing is a problem for those who are less fortunate in our city. And so I know that there are a lot of complaints around the housing stuff. And so if the commission, let me say first, if I am approved, right? If I'm confirmed to be a commissioner, and then the commission said, hey, Stu, we want to pull you on some of this housing stuff, then that's what I would be apt to do. My whole thing is to listen, to learn, and then assess where my needs might really be.
Okay, I appreciate that. Do any of you have concerns about conflicts of interest or the appearance of potential conflicts of interest that might occur during your service on the commission, including based on your other professional obligations, personal connections, or political activities? Let me go in reverse order and start with Stuart Anderson.
Well, I'd have to have some conversations with some people about some stuff. I work heavily as a contract worker for Anacostia Coordinating Council, organization, nonprofit organization, which periodically has received grants from the city. So I don't know exactly how that might play into effect. I may have to step out or recruit myself from some of the cases that come my way. But other than that, I see no issues that are in play now or that would be in play later.
Thank you. Mr. Baldwin.
Well, the elephant in the room is that I am a practice attorney, and I am a practice labor and employment attorney. So this is right up my alley. What I can say is that as of right now, I am only licensed to practice law in the state of Maryland and Maryland Federal District Court. My bar admission for DC is currently pending, but if and when it does clear and I am practicing in DC, if there is some type of conflict of interest arises, I will make sure that I seek counseling with the Mayor's General Counsel Office. And if it's determined that that there is a conflict, then we can either I will recuse myself from hearing a particular case, or I would not bring the case to the DC Commission on Human Rights, or excuse me, the DC Office of Human Rights. I do have, we can talk those out and discuss that with potential clients as well. I believe in full transparency. So letting the clients know the limitations of my representation and letting them know like the full avenues. You know, we could go to the Office of Human Rights, or we pursue it federally with the EEOC. So I don't envision any conflict of interest. And if they do come about, I think there are very accessible and very easy ways to rectify that.
I appreciate it. Thank you for putting that on the record.
Yes.
And Ms. Clymer.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. I can't envision any conflicts of interest. If you were to talk to my friends, I think that what they would probably tell you is the most annoying and most admirable thing about me is that I am obsessed with fairness, even when it's inconvenient. And sometimes that may mean siding against a trans person if I feel that their claim is not up to where it should be. I think that people cannot have faith in the government if the government is not faithful to the people. And sometimes that means doing things that we may not like, but in the long run is the right thing to do regardless. So no, I can imagine no conflicts of interest.
I appreciate it. And staying with you, Ms. Clymer, as somebody who has gone through has utilized OHR, and I'm sorry that it was necessary. I appreciate how you sort of handled it. But as somebody who has utilized OHR, now, do you think that this will give you insights that will help you as a commissioner in navigating the issues that come before you?
Yes, Mr. Chair, I do. Fortunately, my case never made it to the commission. We went through the, how do you call it? I'm losing my words here, but the appropriate discussion with the staff of OHR. They were able to adjudicate that within the office without it going to the commission. And the great thing about that process was that it gave me insight on how intimidating the process can be, even when everything goes right. Being in that office with someone who has discriminated against you can be intimidating.
Yeah.
And I think I have the perspective of folks who may have felt that the process was a little intimidating for them. So I'd like to think that gives me a little bit more perspective on the commission.
I appreciate that. What are you referencing, the intake or mediation?
I would say both. And by the way, everything was professional and fair. I don't feel that the process was unfair at any point. But regardless, walking into City Hall and going up to that floor, it was scary. It was a little scary because you don't know what's going to happen next. Right. Now, I'm a white woman. I am a trans woman, so I deal with transphobia, sexism, homophobia, etc. But I'm also white. I'm also able-bodied. I'm not a religious minority. And so I can't imagine what it's like for a trans woman of color to go through this kind of process and face that feeling of intimidation and feeling like the government is not going to treat their case fairly. So I think that's an important perspective.
I appreciate that. Mr. Baldwin, you as was mentioned earlier, you hold a role at NPR. How much does that work with with NPR exposed you to local concerns in DC?
I very seldom, if ever, produce a segment. I've never written or reported on any local affairs. Generally speaking, because our show is a nationwide show, we try to concentrate on things that we try to focus on things that would garner national attention. So we generally stay away from local politics unless it has some national appeal to it. That being said, I believe the question is leaning towards like like a conflict of interest type of I can recuse myself from stories. I personally don't do any reporting on local affairs, and I don't have the interest in doing so. I try to particularly report on law and emerging legal concepps, Supreme Court decisions, things of that nature. Busy week for me, or busy couple of weeks. So yeah, that's the arena that I try to focus in, and not necessarily local politics.
Okay. And Mr. Anderson, I was aware of your grandchild, and again, my deepest condolences on that loss. Between your experiences with a grandchild and the work that you do, which you laid out well in detail in your opening statement, how do you think that your personal experiences will impact your service on the commission?
Well, I think that I don't want to make assumptions about what the current commissioner's knowledge and awareness happens to be. I've met a couple of them, and I think that they are all very astute individuals, those who I've had a conversation with and have met. But I think that sometimes, you have to have a close relationship. And I'm going to say a transgender, because you started about my grandchild, right? You have to have a relationship with a transgender person to truly understand what they go through, what's happening with them. And so having had that close relationship with my grandchild, Tay taught me so much that I can bring to the table from our personal conversations. The same can be said about returning citizens, whether male or female or transgender. When you talk to them, the experiences are the same, no matter whether it's a female prisoner in Alderson or a male prisoner in Petersburg. The experience has the same ring to it, and the atrocities that take place have the same effect and painful, traumatizing effect that we receive back here. So I bring that to the table, as well as a host of other experiences from having interacted with several young mothers who have been on the housing list for years. I don't understand that, but I guess if I get to hear some of these cases, I'll get to hear the other side of why they've been there that long. But those are the types of insights that I can bring to the commission as a whole, is that the things that I have seen, witnessed, heard, and helped to try to navigate. I can then say, well, in this case, this didn't work that way. And in this case, it sounds like this would happen here, and this is what you did. I mean, I'm the type of individual who I destruct things. I take things apart and put them back together. And so that's something that I'm good at. I'm a logistics coordinator for a whole bunch of stuff in this city. The Father's Day motorcade and trying to figure out, okay, what's the best route not to interrupt whatever stuff. I bring that type of mechanical breakdown to the team. Not saying it's not there, not saying it's not somebody there who can't separate the language, the legal language, and be able to then explain it to others. I can do some of that too.
I appreciate that. And I like what you said in your opening statement about putting this in plain language that really goes well with Ms. Clymer's point about the intimidation factor. And these are things that we all need to be conscious of to make sure, it's one thing to have a process that works well. It's another thing for it to be truly accessible. And we need to make sure we are inviting different perspectives. I agree with the quote. Dr. King said it, President Obama said it many times, that the arc of the moral universe is long, but it bends toward justice. And in times like this, it feels longer than other times. We're seeing, attacks on reproductive rights, which may lead to attack on LGBTQ rights that were, hard fought and hard won. We're seeing transphobia, homophobia, and increasing discrimination against Jewish people, Asian people, and it can be difficult in times like this to believe that we're making progress. But I do believe we're making progress. It's just progress is not always a straight line. This commission is particularly important in that work because I believe DC to be a caring, loving, affirming city. I think most of us do. That doesn't mean that there aren't places that we have to fix things or help folks understand or frankly bring consequences to bear when there is discrimination. And so the role that OHR plays is important, and we're seeing increasing attention to OHR from the council for good reason. So these roles are particularly important. I want to thank you all again for stepping up, because you all do know, but many in the public may not know, that this isn't just show up to a couple meetings a year kind of commission. This is work, and it is work that is particularly meaningful. And to have a talented panel of folks who are willing to put in that time and that effort, it means a lot. And I want to thank you for stepping up to this. Those are all the questions I have. Again, we got a lot of information from you all prior to the hearing. Your testimonies were particularly illuminating. And so again, I want to thank you. I'm looking forward to moving these nominations along. And my guess is that my colleagues on the council, well, first on the committee and then on the council, will approve of these. But certainly, I look forward to moving them along. So again, I want to say thank you. I do want to mention, for anybody who was not able to testify but would like to testify or put their testimony on the record, a written testimony is welcome and encouraged, and it will be made part of the official record. So anyone who is interested in submitting testimony, please do so by email. Send it to the Committee on Government Operations and Facilities at facilities@dccouncil.us, facilities@dccouncil.us. The record for this roundtable will close at the close of business tomorrow, Friday, July 1st, 2022. With that, the business before this committee is concluded. The time is now 1:05 p.m. and this roundtable is adjourned. Thank you all